will hear it. Maybe not during class, but oh, before you sit down, this just doesn't seem to be on. Okay. Now we have these wonderful fans over there, and they're just sitting there useless. Maybe we can turn them on. Put it on low or medium. Put them on medium. Yeah, so it's not too loud. Uh-oh. The main switch is on the right, and then the control. That's it. That's the make. Yeah, and then do the same thing on this one. That's all right. It's all right. It may not be a one-handed thing. Oh my God. All right, that's good. Here, this one too. Same one. Same thing. Don't. Yeah. Oh boy, we're getting the cool now. That's fast. But that's too fast. Yeah. All right, you have your sheet. This is not on, but we won't worry about it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhanhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mitipad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jaya Mishnapad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. I think we're on text 24 of chapter 16, page 636, 636. So this is now working. Hare Krishna. Is that loud enough? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of August 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in the 16th chapter entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, text number 23, page 636. Mukunda Charan, do you think you can figure out how to turn that on low? I'm afraid the noise is going to be too much for this thing. The button on the left, yeah, try that. One more, that's it. That's it. Okay. Okay, text number 23. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya. Alright, let's try that one more time. Text 23, top of the page, 636. 636? Oh, you have the other one. We're going to have to hide that one. 16th chapter, text 23. The different page number in that particular book. I can see the margins. That's the old printing. Just don't. When you finish with that book, give it to me. I'm going to hide it because it's too much trouble. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. 16th chapter, text 23, at page 636. All right, I'm going to let him. Page 636. At the top. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Parashakti. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Go ahead, Marcy. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Kundacharan. Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Ed, you want to give it a shot? Yakshasthavidamutsrijya vartate kamakarataha nasasiddhim avapnoti nasukhaṃ naparam gatim. Damodar, just time to turn up the volume a mite, just a little bit. That's okay. Okay. Word by word meanings. Yaha, anyone who, Shastra Vidhim, the regulations of these scriptures. Utsrijya, giving up. Vartate, remains. Kamakarataha, acting whimsically in lust. Na, never. Saha, he. Siddhim, perfection. Avapnoti, achieves. Na, never. Sukham, happiness. Na, never. Param, the supreme. Gatim, perfectional stage. I think that's good. Okay. Thank you, Damodar. Translation. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. Purport. As described before, the Shastra Vidhi, or the direction of the Shastra, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. If one does not follow them and acts whimsically according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he never will be perfect in his life. In other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind. In the human form of life, a living entity is expected to be sane and to follow the regulations given for elevating his life to the highest platform. But if he does not follow them, then he degrades himself. But even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. And even if he accepts the existence of God, if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. The word kamakarataha is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. He knows that this should be done, but still he does not do it. Therefore he is called whimsical. Such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme Lord. Such persons cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. The human life is especially meant for purifying one's existence, and one who does not follow the rules and regulations cannot purify himself, nor can he attain the real stage of happiness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, as I pointed out in previous classes, there's a little lesson here, starting in text 21, which we'll review. After describing, just to review the chapter, we're coming to the end. At the beginning, for 4 verses, he describes the saintly qualities, beginning with fearlessness. And it's interestingly enough, in the commentary, they're divided according to different social stations. Abhayam sattva sangshuddhir, that's the first qualities. Fearlessness, that's for the sannyasis, and always purifying one's existence and like that. And then there's qualities for the vanaprasthas and grihasthas, brahmacharis, like that. But all of them are within the paradigm of the rules and regulations. In other words, there's a universal law being spoken of here. And if one follows the law and leads his life according to the law, being the vidhis. Vidhi means the prescriptions and the proscriptions. In any set of laws, there's things that you can't do, and there's also things that you should do and must do. Paying taxes, for instance, if they try, but if you follow those laws, the do's and the don'ts, then you're a law-abiding person. You can have your freedom. You can enjoy citizenship, peace of mind. There's benefits. And if you don't, then you suffer. So in this chapter, Krishna is especially laying down the law. He gives a whole list of saintly qualities which lead to purification, happiness, and ultimately the supreme goal. There being a supreme goal of human life is a very important lesson in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not just we're not just an accidental result of atoms coming together. There is a purpose to this whole creation, and there's also a goal that we can achieve, but only in the human form of life. So in text 21, he has just described what happens if you consistently violate the rules. You're a declared enemy of God, and you lead a demonic life governed by basically lust, anger, and greed. Those three, he says, are the three gates leading to hell. Text 21. There are three gates leading to this hell he just described previously. Lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man, he means human being, should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. And if one does so, he says in text 22, the person who has escaped these three gates of hell performs acts conducive to self-realization, and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. So there's the giving up of these things, resisting the urge to act on the basis of simply your whimsical desire, which inevitably leads to frustration and anger. And if you succeed in dominating the world, you can become more and more greedy. Isn't it inconceivable? You have individuals worth almost, approaching $200 billion. You have one company worth $1 trillion. This is an extreme example of greed. What's the money for? They can't spend it. All they can do is buy back their own stock and increase the value. It's absolutely obscene. This is a perfect example leading to hell. So Krishna is laying down the law. He says, there are three gates. If you can avoid these, then, if someone is able to avoid them, then he acts for his own best interest. This word, acharat yatmanak shreyas, in text 22, the verse previous to the one we just read. Acharati means acting. We have this word acharya. An acharya is one who knows the scripture, acts according to it, and teaches. That's the definition of acharya. And our disciplic succession that I mentioned here, you'll see it's mentioned at the end of the introduction at the beginning here, is a series of great devotees who embodied those acharya principles. Not just they realized souls, but they taught. They realized, they acted exactly according to Shastra, and they took the trouble to teach out of compassion. So, acharat yatmanak, and then tato yati param gatim. So here he's drawing a very great contrast, and thereby heading toward the supreme destination. What is that destination? The first one is a negative definition of it, breaking free from the bondage of birth and death. The existence of birth and death, and repeated birth and death, this means that we have to have some faith in the idea that we're eternal souls and not just this body. That's the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. If we understand that, and it makes perfect sense for various reasons, then it changes the whole paradigm of our life. Because we're not just existing in these few years, and these, limited by a few decades, and that's it. We're acting for our eternal life. We're making our destiny in this life as whatever we do. There's no death. I made up a little poem for that. You wanted a poem? Everybody dies. Nobody dies. So every space body dies. Everybody dies, but nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. It's right there. So if you believe that, then it has to, if you actually believe it, then you have to change your activities. Otherwise, you're living a very whimsical life, and you're condemning yourself to a lot of suffering. So that's what Krishna is saying here. If you can escape these three gates, and the process of yoga, specifically bhakti yoga, gives you the tools, the means by which you can control this tendency to act just on your whims, and it's that kama that leads the gates to the krodha, or anger and greed. So then, now the verse we read today, he goes back against the other side. On the other hand, shastra vidamutsuja, if you give up, if you reject the do's and don'ts in the Shastra, the scripture, and you vartate kamakata. Now this word vartate is important. Vartate means continue. It's understood that in a conditioned life, we're basically acting according to our whims. Nobody is wondering as they walk down the street, is this Vedic? Is this Dharmic? Am I doing the right thing? They're just, especially here in the party town, Pacific Beach, oh, great. That's... He won't be able to come in. You won't be like, the dog can't stay. Yeah. Hare Krishna. So everyone's doing what Krishna says in text 23. And so what's the result of that? It continues to act on the basis of whims, then here's what you get or don't get. Nasa siddhim. You can't get any perfection. The perfection basically being defined as an escape from birth and death. No, you'll be bound by hundreds and thousands of material desires, unfulfilled, to bring you back. You'll be bound by your karma, whether it's so-called good or so-called bad. You're bound to take another birth with its concomitant old age, disease, and death. So that's the first thing you don't get, and therefore, and no happiness. You may get some flickering satisfaction, but there's always, as time passes, that happiness will pass and turn into its opposite. And certainly not param gatim. You're not going to go to the supreme goal. What is that supreme goal? Prabhupada gave us the immortal phrase: back home, back to Godhead. Now, let's just contemplate that wonderful statement. Back home, back. First of all, it's home. You know, this is a revolutionary statement. We came from there. That's our natural state. What is it? Satchidananda, eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge, away from all of this relative insanity, you know, all of the threefold miseries, gone, you know. As soon as you don't have the physical body, you don't have the threefold miseries. All of the difficulties in this world come from having to bear the burden of a body. It's actually a name for the conditioned soul. It's a deha britta. A deha britta was one who's bearing a body. We're carrying around his body when we don't really need it. But we wanted it because it's the only way to try to enjoy independently from Krishna. We're naturally enjoying, like anything, in relation to Krishna, in relation to God, as loving servants, loving friends, parents, lovers. There's all the different rasas, relationships that we have, the perverted reflection here. That's where we belong. So it's back home, back to Godhead. You can't, it's not some kingdom that, you know, some paradise where you enjoy yourself. It's, God is there. And by dovetailing our desires with His and being reinstated in our natural position, that's how you enjoy. He's the prime enjoyer, but then you enjoy like anything. That has to be understood by the actual acting in the process of devotional service, training in this life to get there. So this I always thought that this verse and the next one and just really encompass a whole lesson in themselves. That if you give up, first of all, having the Shastra, you know, we sometimes take it for granted, but what Prabhupada went through to give us this book and others like it, which embody the truth, coming down not through Prabhupada. It wasn't his, you know, own ideas. It's coming from Krishna through Prabhupada, and Krishna is speaking here. And the commentary is all based on his own realization, and also Baladeva Vidyabhushan. It's all learned commentary supporting it. And there's no wiggle room. It's not maybe this, maybe that. This is the way it is. So, if we take this verse seriously, if we want a perfection, we want happiness, certainly, and we want to go back to Godhead, then we can't keep acting whimsically. We have to know the rules and regulations and associate ourselves with those who are following, so we get the spiritual strength to also follow. The do's and the don'ts. And then the last verse is, any discussion on this particular verse? Actually, if I could request, because we should really try to have the questions also transmitted, so you know the wireless, until we can get the other one going. Just activate it, and if you have a question, then. Because Madhusudan Prabhu, in the morning he listened to the class, he wrote me several emails and said, what happened to the mic? I can't hear the questions. So this morning we had it going a little bit. All right, so let's do the last verse. Okay. Tasmat chastram pramanam te karya karyam vyavastitao gyatva shastra vidhanoktam karma kartum niharhasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all the rules and regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. If one understands Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, engaging himself in devotional service, he has reached the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literature. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made this process very easy. He asked people simply to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and to engage in the devotional service of the Lord and eat the remnants of foodstuff offered to the deity. One who is directly engaged in all these devotional activities is to be understood as having studied all Vedic literature. He has come to the conclusion perfectly. Of course, for the ordinary persons who are not in Krishna consciousness or who are not engaged in devotional service, what is to be done and what is not to be done must be decided by the injunctions of the Vedas. One should act accordingly without argument. That is called following the principles of Shastra or Scripture. Shastra is without the four principal defects that are visible in the conditioned soul: imperfect senses, the propensity for cheating, certainty of committing mistakes, and certainty of being illusioned. These four principal defects in conditioned life disqualify one from putting forth rules and regulations. Therefore, the rules and regulations as described in the Shastra, being above these defects, are accepted without alteration by all great saints, acharyas, and great souls. In India, there are many parties of spiritual understanding, generally classified as two, the impersonalist and the personalist. Both of them, however, lead their lives according to the principles of the Vedas. Without following the principles of the Scriptures, one cannot elevate himself to the perfectional stage. One who actually, therefore, understands the purport of the Shastras is considered fortunate. In human society, aversion to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all fall-downs. That is the greatest offense of human life. Therefore, Maya, the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always giving us trouble in the shape of the threefold miseries. This material energy is constituted of three modes of material nature. One has to raise himself at least to the mode of goodness before the path to understanding the Supreme Lord can be opened. Without raising oneself to the standard of the mode of goodness, one remains in ignorance and passion, which are the cause of the maniac life. Those in the modes of passion and ignorance deride the Scriptures, deride the holy man, and deride the proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They disobey the instructions of the spiritual master, and they do not care for the regulations of the Scriptures. In spite of hearing the glories of devotional service, they are not attracted. Thus they manufacture their own way of elevation. These are some of the defects of human society which lead to the demoniac status of life. If, however, one is able to be guided by a proper and bona fide spiritual master, who can lead one to the path of elevation, to the higher stage, then one's life becomes successful. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 16th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the divine and demoniac natures. So, this is several important concepts in this last verse. The first one is the idea of pramana. Pramana is something that we all accept, even without knowing what it's called. And that is some criteria for how we act. Even if it's just our own whims, that's what we accept as authoritative. This is how we should act. Most of us don't really think that way. Most people think, but they're accepting the authority of their mind and senses. You know, this looks good. I know from experience that it tastes good, and I'm going to eat it. You know, you go into the supermarket. Sometimes I go into the regular supermarket. I'm usually looking for, you know, the organic kale or something. But if you go down the one aisle, it's all snacks on both sides. Chips on this side and cookies on that side, and you know. And these are engineered in order to attract the tongue. And once they got you, you know, once you eat it once, then you're going to remember it again. And then we end up with an epidemic of obesity and diabetes, and poor little kids getting diabetes who never got it before. Because it's just a question of whim. It tastes good. I like it. It's cheap. Why shouldn't I eat it? You know? There's a million reasons why you shouldn't eat it. The main thing is that it's not offered, and it's not offerable. You know, devotees would say, no, I can't eat it. It's not, you know, you're protected by that. But if you don't accept, you have no faith in the injunctions, the simple injunctions of the Shastra, then you take your pramana to be your senses and your mind and like that. And that is sure to keep you bound in this world. So the first step is to accept the authority of really the person who embodies the Shastra. Because if you just find a book on a shelf and there's no embodiment, there's no example, it's unlikely that it's going to affect you. Even if you become interested, what you're going to want to do is find a place where people are actually leading their lives this way, right? This was Prabhupada's great advantage, or he had a lot of seeming disadvantages when he came to America. You know, he was old, he didn't have really much time, his health wasn't the greatest, he had no money, and he had no followers. It looks like a slam dunk. Nobody thought he could possibly succeed. You remember Samati Raji was reluctant to give him a ticket. He said, "You're just going to die over there." It looked like completely impossible. But what Prabhupada had was, of course, Krishna behind him. And he had the absolute certainty from his own personal experience of the truth of what he was teaching. And the purity of pure devotee, which was attractive to a certain few. You know, you had to be really in a special situation to be attracted when there was no institution. But anyway, Krishna blessed him, and after a struggle, he was able to impart faith in the Shastra. Even though there was no Bhagavad Gita, there were just the 3 books that he brought with him, the first canto. But he was teaching, he was giving Bhagavad Gita class. He would read the Sanskrit, or he had them read some other translation, and then he would give commentary. So, imparting that faith in the embodied Shastra, as Prabhupada says it so eloquently in the Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, I don't know the verse number 17, 18. But nashta prayasha badrisha nityam bhagavata sevaya. He's describing how there in the Bhagavatam, by hearing about Krishna, hearing the holy name, and Krishna from within, he purifies one of the abhadras. What are the abhadras? The tendency to act according to lust, anger, and greed. That's the impurity. So that becomes purified miraculously by sincere hearing and serving. And it becomes destroyed almost to nil by regularly serving 2 kinds of Bhagavats. The book Bhagavad and the person Bhagavad. This is also the book Bhagavad. It may not be called Bhagavatam, but it's nothing but the words of Bhagavan, Krishna. It's definitely Bhagavat. Anything in direct relationship with Bhagavan is called Bhagavat. But the person Bhagavat, who embodies it, those 2 together are a very potent combination. Someone who's living the actual words of the Shastra and experiencing the results, such a person can, if you're receptive at all, if you're at all interested in philosophical things, will affect you. So simply put here, Krishna is saying, one has to accept the authority of Shastra as one's evidence of what to do and what not to do. And in doing karya vyavastato, and knowing, then you have to know Shastra vidhanoktam, you have to accept it as a matter of duty. Why duty? Because you're not going to be spontaneously attracted at the beginning. This is back to the kamakarataha. You're spontaneously attracted in our conditioned state to act according to our whims. What's pleasing, what's not pleasing to my senses. That's exactly what you can't do. So your intelligence is purified by hearing the Shastras from the right source, and you have faith in that pramana, and so you accept it as a duty. A duty is something that's given by a higher authority, and you accept it because you know it's for your own good. You know this is the right thing to do. And that's really what Dharma is all about. There's no need for Dharma in the spiritual world. Everyone's spontaneously attracted to serve Krishna. There's not a thought of acting whimsically according to my own senses. So there's no need of the Shastra there. You know, the gopis don't have their morning program when they go down. Let's have, you know, they Om Namo Bhagavate. Their morning program is getting up, milking the cows, and thinking of Krishna, and running off to meet him sometimes. But in our state, we need it. We need this. We need the law. Just like in an ordinary society like this, there have to be laws. Otherwise, it's a jungle, right? Unfortunately, the laws that people accept are not absolute laws. So it's just a way of making it somewhat livable. But here, if you want to get perfection and real happiness and achieve the ultimate goal, go back to God, then we have to accept the Shastra. And so that's what these books are all about. This is why Prabhupada was so keen on producing his books. Did not come until he had those 3 books in hand. Because he knew that those books really embodied the teaching, and they would live beyond, after he left, the books would be on to form the foundation of the society. So I always thought that these 4 verses, especially the last 2, are really essential for our understanding, and we should embrace them. Okay, that brings us to, we still have time to, yes, Prabhu. But wait a minute. Turn it on and see if you can.
Hello. So, you were, just a second ago, you were saying that, Prabhupada says we should accept the Shastra as basis for what and what not to do.
That's what Krishna says right here.
Yeah. But what about accepting the things that we may not understand fully? Because there's, like Prabhupada said, that we shouldn't have blind faith, but at another point in time, I guess, I was listening to following Srila Prabhupada, and there were some devotees who had went up to Prabhupada, and I forget who it was, but he had like billions of bodyguards, and they're like, Prabhupada, how could this, I forget, what's his name?
Yeah, that's Ugusen.
Yeah, they're like, how could he have billions of bodyguards? That doesn't make sense. And Prabhupada said, if you cannot accept the Puranas, you should just go. So, I mean, how do you reconcile between those two statements?
Well, I know that conversation. There's a whole backstory to that, which I won't discuss with you now. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have to accept that much of what we hear about doesn't comport with our preconceptions of what can be, what can't be real. But the basic principles that we learn from the Bhagavad Gita of the existence of the soul, the transmigration, and the need for an intelligence guiding this world. I mean, the most amazing thing, once Yamaraj asked his son, Yudhishthira, about what's the most amazing thing. You know the story? In the Mahabharata. And the Pandavas, along with Kunti, I think were in exile in the forest. And it's typical life in the forest, and they were very thirsty. So Yudhishthira sent one of his brothers after another to try to find some water. And I think he sent first Arjun and then Bhima. So they found, a short way away, they found this nice pond. But as soon as they were going to take some drink some and put some in a flask or something, they heard a voice, disembodied voice, that's, you can't drink from that, this is my pond, until you answer some questions. And Arjun said, who's this guy? I'm a great warrior, you can't do that. And so he just drank some and immediately fainted away. Same thing happened with Bhima. I don't know if the twins went too. Did they go? They also went. So the twins went. So now they're all, so Yudhishthira, what happened to my brother? So he goes and he finds them all unconscious in this pond. So Yudhishthira is like righteousness personified. He's the son of Dharmaraj, Yamaraj. And so when he was forbidden to drink from the water, he didn't drink. And so then he started answering the questions. There's a whole series of interesting questions, and the most famous one is, what's the most amazing thing? And the answer was, ahanyahani bhutani gachanti himalayam sheshikstavana michanti kimaschayam atakparam. That day after day, thousands and millions of human beings are dying. Certainly in present day they are with it. And being hauled off to Yamaraj for judgment. But those who are left live in such a way as if they'll never die. It's kind of a mentality, you know. Even as you get old, you say, "Oh my God, so and so passed away," and you know, well, my turn is coming up. You know? But you feel, well, maybe as William Saroyan famously said, as on his deathbed, "I know everyone was dying, but I thought I would be the exception." We actually live that way, you know. You live as if you're going to live forever. So that's certainly true. But I also think one of the most amazing things, a close second to say, is that in our present world, in most of the colleges and high schools, and even in the grade schools, they're teaching that life arose from unliving elements. You know, do they actually teach that God created? I mean, that's the separation of church and state, right? I mean, I don't think they can teach that. And there's this whole philosophy that you know, if you're a creationist, you know, it's a kind of an insult, right? Yeah, creationists. You know, we know better now. You know, that's the ancient religion. You know, but just look around you. I mean, Dravida Prabhu, my old friend, he wrote, the first thing he wrote was, and he was like a top flight mathematician. He was actually a PhD in math, you know, from Cornell, and I mean, I was pretty good in math in high school, and then I went to college, and I said, drew a blank. No, I don't want to go in. You know, I went to Chicago. You know, I audited one class. Oh, you know, half an hour he's writing formulas on the board. I couldn't understand anything. The Sadhaputta could understand all that. He would sometimes, I know, he would spend his classes and he would have a pad with him. Whatever we were saying, he was making out, you know, notes, but basically it was all equations. So he wrote this paper because he was part of the BI, and the title of the paper was Proof by Information Theory. This was his specialty, information theory, which is seeing, determining from something how much information there is in it, and I don't know, something like that. But that's exactly the proper specialty for proving that there's a God, there's an intelligence behind it. Proof from information theory that life could not arise from matter. And he went into calculating all of in the whole universe and all this stuff. You know. So, but the point is, the simple proof given by Aristotle, I think it was. Not Aristotle, no, St. Augustine, about the argument from design. The simple argument that whenever we see anything organized, certainly artificial, you're walking across and you see someone drop their iPad or their iPhone, and it's sitting in the grass. Well, you know it didn't grow from the grass, right? There's a whole bunch of intelligence behind that and artifice, you know, the design. In other words, somebody thought it out. There's an intelligence. So, and the cars and, you know, this artificial world, everything is evidence of somebody thinking, you know, there's a blueprint and everything with this. But when it comes to the human body, which is a much more complex and wonderful machine than any kind of iPhone, oh, no. There's nobody thought it out. There's no big intelligence behind it. You know, does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. But the most amazing thing to me is that all these big scientists, they've convinced themselves, in many cases, that, yeah, it makes sense. We got the proof. And they'll concoct all kinds of crazy theories of parallel universes, right? Isn't it? It just didn't. They missed one. You know, the accidental congruence of the molecules didn't happen in that universe, so nothing alive. It's just a garbage heap over there. And this is the one that it worked. That's why we know about it. So there's all millions and billions of other universes where there's no life in this one. Just so there's no God. Just so there can't be a God. That's the most amazing thing. So. So the question is, how can we accept these things which seem to blow our minds? You know, they just don't seem to compute. Well, Krishna says in the second chapter, Ascharya Vipashyati Kashchadenam, that even the existence of the soul is amazing. You know, some people hear of it amazing, some people don't accept it. So once you accept these four defects Prabhupada was talking about here. You know, think about it. We have imperfect senses. I like to think of them in order. You have imperfect senses, therefore you inevitably make mistakes, right? And by making mistakes and continuing to make the mistake, you become illusioned. Hare Krishna. Okay. And when you become illusioned and you teach that illusion or delusion as the absolute truth, that's called cheating. So this is the whole world is suffering from these. I can't see God. Show me God. No, you don't have the eyes to see God. Yeah. You know, who needs? I don't need this philosophy. You know, I'm on my way to the beach. I'm on my way to work. I have a lot of stuff to do. This is my paradigm. You know, you guys are nuts. You really believe that there were 30 trillion? It was actually 30 trillion bodyguards for Ugrasein? Doesn't make sense. Yeah, we've worked it out. According to Prabhupada said 30 billion, but it's actually 30. So, but once you understand that there's no limitations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what does it mean to be infinitely powerful? What does it mean to be actually omniscient? Why do we accept when Krishna says Vedaham Samatitani? I know everything in the past, everything in the present, everything in the future. To me, that's just as inconceivable as 30 trillion bodyguards. In other words, there's this. How do I put it? It really does depend on, you know, having faith in the line. You think what we're saying. Okay, I doubt it. You know, I doubt it. This sounds like fairy tales to me. So what you're saying is that Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the 6 Goswamis, Madhvacharya, all of these, you know, exalted souls, high, towering intellects, they'll all be fooled by this Shastra. They don't know what they're talking about. Who am I to say that? There's some way in which it's true. We don't know how it works, but there's some way that it's true. Because what are you left with otherwise? Your own senses. And we know that that's not going to give you the answer that you're looking for. So we have to suspend our disbelief. And there's so much about it that makes perfect sense. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, the existence of the soul, the transmigration through the body, dehinosmin yata dehe. Just as we experience ourselves as little babies and children and 10 years old, 12 years old, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, we're the same person in a changing body. The mind has changed. The body has certainly changed. I'm the same person. What is that same person? The conscious being. You know? So that's like the first stage in enlightenment. That you can figure out. And we know there's some empirical proof. There's that famous, probably has 20 million hits by now. This simple kid, Methodist kid, grew up in Kansas somewhere, and it's on YouTube. And he insisted that he was a fighter pilot in the last war. Did you ever see it? Yeah, everyone's seen it. And yeah, and he's describing the planes and describing things, and they go back, and you know, in other words, there's empirical evidence. That's just the most famous one, maybe in America. It happened in America. But they showed, in India it happens a lot. These young kids say, oh, you're not my mother. But they're speaking in Bengali or Hindi, whatever. You know. And they go 60 miles and there's the, you know, it all works out. The kids are describing, you know. There's no other explanation for it except transmigration. So, in other words, these things which you cannot perceive are sometimes corroborated by empirical evidence. So what I'm saying is that once you chant enough, you know, it kind of, you're already experiencing things differently in the material world, and you're supported with, you know, the Bhagavad Gita, and nothing is impossible for Krishna. That's why he's God. Okay, well, we've almost come to the end of our session. But what are we on? Krishna book or Nectar of Devotion? We haven't read the Nectar of NRD. All right, let's not waste a minute. Let's say Nectar of Devotion. and we are in the chapter entitled, stupid thing. The eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. Very important topic. Yes, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 9th chapter, King Dhruva says, "My dear Lord, the transcendental pleasure derived by meditation upon your lotus feet, which is enjoyed by the pure devotees, cannot be approached by the transcendental pleasure derived by the impersonalists through self-realization. So how can the fruit of workers, who at most can aspire to promotion to the higher heavenly planets, understand you? And how can they be described as enjoying a happiness similar to the devotee's happiness?" Okay, now, this is, he's going through the benefits of devotional service. There are 8. And the next one is devotional service surpasses all liberation. It's even better than liberation. How much a devotee is seriously attached to the devotional service of the Lord can be understood from the statement of Maharaj Prithu, which is described in Bhagavatam 4th canto. He prays to the Lord thus, "My dear Lord, if after taking liberation I have no chance of hearing the glories of your Lordship, glories chanted by pure devotees from the core of their hearts in praise of your lotus feet, and if I have no chance for this honey of transcendental bliss, then I shall never ask for liberation or this so-called spiritual emancipation. I shall simply always pray to your Lordship that you may give me millions of tongues and millions of ears so I can constantly chant and hear of your transcendental glories." The impersonalists desire to merge into the existence of the Supreme, but without keeping their individuality, they have no chance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Because they have no idea of the transcendental form of the Lord, there is no chance of their chanting and hearing of his transcendental activities. In other words, unless one is already beyond liberation, one can't relish the transcendental glories of the Lord, nor can one understand the transcendental form of the Lord. A similar statement is found in Bhagavatam 5th canto, where Pariksit says, Shukadeva addresses Pariksit, the great soul King Bharat was so much attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna that he very easily gave up his lordship over the earthly planet and his affection for his children, society, friends, royal opulence, and beautiful wife. He was so very lucky that the goddess of fortune was pleased to offer him all kinds of material concessions, but he never accepted any of these material opulences. Shukadeva praises this behavior of Bharat very highly. He says, "Any person whose heart is attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord, Madhusudan, does not care even for that liberation aspired to by many great sages, what to speak of material opulences." Okay, we'll begin there tomorrow, and I promise I'll try to leave a little more time for reading the Nectar of Devotion. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You know what that siren means, right? Threefold miseries. It's reminding us, this is not your home. One day the siren will come for us. She would say that.
It's 23 pages. It's 2 bags, each 23 pages. And then you get one bag.
Actually, one program with 50 kg is someone's big picture of lucky stuff. So and he was doing that stuff, and the husband and the wife saying,
Oh, it's not just like I'm talking to you. I guess the bookstore is like the car.
I mean, not in a special way like that. It was like, so the guy's like, yeah, it's good. I think it's probably a deep comment. But he had to go all the way to India to get it. Or when I was looking at it. I thought it was 15. Oh, that's it. Even India, they were super figured out.
You should go on the side.
It's Christmas time. I don't know, diamond, you wouldn't just put it in a pocket like that.
No, you're going to have to leave. Namo Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Krishna Prestaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavari Asacharita Tarini Nirvishesha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Rasari Bhaktavinda. Turn them on high. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Rasari Bhaktavinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shri Rasari Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Jaya Radha Giridhari, Radha Giridhari Radhe. Bhagavad Paramahamsa, Parujikacharya Ashtotra Drishishi Mad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa, Parujikacharya Ashtotra Drishishi Mad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Prabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Bhava Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Kumar Didi Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mahi ki jai. Yamuna Mahi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Radha. Namaste Narasimhaya. Lara Lara Dayine. Purnanya Kashi Korakshaha. Shilatankana Charaye. Utton Shinga Parton Shingo. Yato Yato Yamitaton Shinga. Mahin Shingo Rindayin Shingo. Nirsimhamadin Sharanam Prapaje. Tapakara Kamalavare Nata Abhita Srinna Andarita Hiranyakasipu Tanu Vrinda Vagita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tapakara Kamalavare Bhavakara Kamavare Nakamadita Singha Sambarita Hiranyakasipu Tanam Vrinda Vagita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Avakara Kamalava Ahamita Srinna Mundarita Jagadisha 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 Keshavandita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavandita Narari Rupa Jaya Singhadev 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 Jaya Singhadev Sri Bhagavan ki jai, Kaladhana ki jai, Go Premanande Hare Yes, it is. No plates, metal plates. Lounge.
You should get
Cup, play, look at this guy. And we definitely got spoons right here.
Pavan! Prashad? Pavan!
Come on, take a little fish shot. At least something.
You're coming back?
I'm coming through.
You're coming back, okay.
Yeah.
You, Justin, well, it's just you and me. You just let me know. Looks like a Santos special. One or two.
I learned something.
Okay. Coming out of there. Something new? It's okay. This is new now. You want something? Prabhu? Hare Krishna, please. What would you like? More? One or two? How about a piece of cake? How about a